Okay, so group updates. So last month, we covered a goal setting process the group went through. Being part of People Power, the grassroots arm of the ACLU, we are guided by their principles. The ACLU has come out in support of transformative change to our policing system, and they laid out a 3-part formula for how to get there. So if you were at our July meeting, we presented these goals. The short-term red goals were engaging on the Seattle level, and the blue represented areas where we needed to do a little more research. So now let's talk about the results of that research. So this is where our group's mainly been the last 3+ years, which is focused on Seattle. So as we've been doing the work, we realized that King County was also an area that could use attention. So there is an interconnectedness here. For example, when there's an officer-involved shooting in the Seattle Police Department, the inquests are handled by King County. Then as we've dug deeper into the structural obstacles that get in the way of meaningful reform, we realized that a lot can and needs to be done at the state level to pave the way both for Seattle and King County. So as a result, our group's expanding our focus, and we're now going to be working at all 3 of these levels. So just quickly to go through the goals at the 3 levels. So in Seattle, they're the same as what we presented last month, which is supporting the Decriminalize Seattle and King County Equity Now coalition demands to defund SPD by 50% and reinvest those funds into community-led health and safety systems. We will also continue the work we've been doing for several years, which is to monitor the police contract negotiations. Then in King County, we are working to pass 4 county charter amendments in November that are foundational for police reform to happen. And then in Washington State, we will be working to elect candidates in November who give us the best potential for building on the current momentum for change and pass statewide laws. Because the ACLU is nonpartisan, we can't endorse candidates, but we can do research and provide educational materials to voters. Then in the 2021 legislative session, we'll work on advocating for bills and legislation that address topics such as collective bargaining reform, independent investigations, use of deadly force, and qualified immunity. So though all these areas are important, we will be especially focused on collective bargaining reform for law enforcement unions, as we found that these contracts have been the major hurdle for any policy reforms happening. So putting these goals under our 3-part formula, we've got our Seattle goals, we've got our King County goals, and our Washington State goals. And then underlying everything is the need to do public education and outreach. So another way to look at this, here's a timeline of when these goals are going to be relevant. So next week, there's going to be a Seattle City Council vote on the 2020 budget. Then there's going to be a short respite where City Council is going to take a break before jumping into the 2021 budget talks. And then somewhere in here, we don't know the exact timeline, but the SPOG or Seattle Police Officer Guild contract negotiations are going to be happening. These are important because the result of that negotiation is going to let us know how much of the reforms being talked about can actually come to fruition. Then for the King County goal, we'll be working up until Election Day to do voter engagement around the charter amendments that we're supporting. Similarly, for the state work, we'll be doing state candidate engagement and voter education, specifically focusing on policing reform. Between now and the start of legislative session in January, we're going to try to recruit a prime sponsor to address collective bargaining reform. After the election, we can also start preparing for the legislative session. And then on January 11th, when everything kicks off, it's going to be all hands on deck to try to get things through at the state level.